Alright, so here we are, Spa. It's traditionally the one we come back to after the summer break, but for the last couple of years, we've had it beforehand. So, let's get into it. One of the one of the most spectacular races of the calendar, the longest circuit. Let's go. And we'll start off with the schedule. We are supported by F3 and F2 and the Super Cup this weekend, so quite a packed timetable. F3 practice will kick things off at 9:55 local time on the Friday, and then it will be followed at 11:05 by F2 free practice. F1 FP1 is at 1:30 PM local time, 12:30 PM UK time, before F3 qualifying follows that up at 3 PM local. Then it's F2 qualifying at 3:55, F1 FP2 at 5 PM local, 4 PM UK time, and then you have Super Cup practice at 6:30 PM local time to round out Friday's action. Saturday starts off with the F3 sprint at 10 o'clock local, followed by Super Cup qualifying at 11:20. F1 FP3 is at 12:30 PM local time, 11:30 AM UK time, followed by the F2 sprint at 2:15 PM. After that, we have F1 qualifying, 4 PM local, 3 PM UK, and that rounds out Saturday's on-track action. Sunday starts off with the F3 feature at 8:30 AM local time, early start. F2 follows that at 10 AM, followed by the Super Cup race at 11:45 AM. Then it's time for the Belgian Grand Prix, 3 PM local time, 2 PM UK time. And much like a lot of things last year, we can't really take too much from last year's data into this weekend, but it was a sprint weekend in which Piastri ended up getting pole position for sprint qualifying and Lando for the Grand Prix. The sprint itself was won by Red Bull and Max Verstappen. He was 7/10 clear of Piastri, who was 7/10 clear of Norris. In the Grand Prix, however, it was a McLaren 1-2. 3 seconds Piastri's advantage over Norris, whilst Verstappen was down in 4th, 21.7 off the win, and also 1.7 behind 3rd place's Charles Leclerc. It was a whole thing about the track conditions last year, where it was to do with things like rain delays and also wet to dry, and that also affected the sprint. Basically, if you had the optimum conditions, Verstappen was lightning. However, once it got slightly suboptimal, it was McLaren territory. So all of this makes Spa something quite difficult to predict. Remember, we've got the introduction of things like straight line mode this year, as well as the changes to the power units. So whilst you could potentially look at McLaren doing quite well, after all the Mercedes power unit has been quite strong, it's really hard to make a reasonable guess. Ferrari, for example, was expected to struggle at Silverstone to the extent of about 6/10 a lap power unit wise, but at the same time they ended up winning. Now granted, part of it was strategy, but they were rapid, and you look at the pace that both of them had over the course of the weekend, they were competing up at the front. So it's really going to be a thing of how do these cars perform with more straight line, and also when it comes to the undulations, when it comes to the change in elevation. Eau Rouge and Raidillon, for example, the run down the Kemmel Straight, that's a massive flat out blast. There's a mix of, for F1 cars, high, medium and low speed corners, but lots of it is on the medium to high side, so you'd expect that it could be an everything circuit, right? We could see somewhere that McLaren and Mercedes are up at the front, and then there'll be some parts of the track, I would imagine, where the Red Bull is the strongest, and some parts of the track where I would imagine the Ferrari is the strongest. That's just what my prediction is. Imagine that we're going to have different teams at the top of FP1, FP2 and FP3. One of those teams will get pole and potentially win the race, but there is a chance that, say, it's Verstappen on pole, and then, I don't know, Antonelli wins. Let's go with Antonelli again. He's been rapid this season. He's just been so peaky. Though, could there be a hometown advantage? I know it's not technically Verstappen's home race. It's not technically Lando Norris's either. But for the two of them, this is sort of a second home race. Because both of them have some kind of Belgian heritage. I think for Norris himself, isn't it actually to Wallonia or is it to Flanders? I honestly can't remember. Regardless, folks, that will be that for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for your continued support. Hope to see you probably Sunday for a Grand Prix review. Till then, bye for now.